the woman with the story that led to that six-figure hush money payment, a cover-up, and ultimately the first ever criminal trial in an American ex-president came under relentless fire today from Donald Trump's defense team. The composed and rather steely Stormy Daniels was on the stand for hours, what felt like days of cross-examination, and then a rather brief redirect when the prosecutors got to go back and talk to her again. Now, the trial for Donald Trump is still underway right now. On the stand as we speak, the ex-president's former assistant. Her name is Madeleine Westerhout. She told the jury that Donald Trump paid very close attention to his finances, even when he was in the White House. But we begin with Donald Trump's defense team throwing the kitchen sink at Stormy Daniels. They were trying to portray her at times as money-grubbing, inconsistent, driven by personal hatred, even rolling out the "she's crazy" line of attack against her. At one point, attorney Susan Necheles said this, quote, "You have a lot of experience making phony stories about sex," to which Daniels replied, quote, "Wow, that's not how I would put it. The sex in the films is very much real, just like what happened to me in that room." To try to prove that Stormy Daniels profited off of her association with Donald Trump, Trump's defense lawyers pointed out that Stormy sold merchandise, to which Stormy Daniels fired back, quote, "Not unlike Mr. Trump." Team Trump also suggested that Stormy Daniels opposed Trump politically and wanted to take him down, a line of questioning that comes with a lot of risk for the ex-president's team. As NBC News reports, quote, "The defense just spent considerable time trying to prove that Daniels had a political motive for wanting to out Trump's story, that she was trying to hurt his election bid." But wouldn't that bolster the prosecution's argument that Trump had a motive for wanting to silence her? During the prosecution's redirect, the DA's office reminded everyone that Donald Trump is the only person on trial, not Stormy Daniels, bringing up a potentially devastating piece of evidence. They asked Stormy Daniels about an admission by Michael Cohen and Trump in a lawsuit that Donald Trump had reimbursed Cohen the $130,000 for the NDA with Stormy Daniels. Prosecution in this line of argument points out that even if she has made money from her association with Trump, her fame has also come at a very steep price. Stormy Daniels said she has had to deal with an avalanche of threats and deal with legal fees. Prosecutor Susan Hoffinger asked this, quote, "On balance, has your publicity been, has publicly telling the truth about Donald Trump been a net positive or a net negative for your life?" Stormy Daniels replied, "Negative." A defiant Stormy Daniels on the stand on day 14 of the Trump election interference hush money trial is where we begin today with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. With us at the table for the hour, New York Times investigative reporter Suzanne Craig. Also joining us, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissmann, plus former executive editor with American Media Inc. and special correspondent for The Hollywood Reporter. Lachlan Cartwright is back, but we will start with my friend and colleague, NBC's Vaughn Hilliard, joining us from outside the courthouse. Vaughn, I read political thrillers, and I kind of hate them, but I kind of love them. But I hate when the tension is so much that reading them makes me feel sick. And reading the transcript and reading the vitriol that was directed at Stormy Daniels, at some points I had that physical reaction to the aggressiveness with which, I'll just say it, they sought to slut-shame her. And the slut-shaming came in the form of, well, aren't all your, adult films fake? I thought and again, I have no idea what the jurors were thinking. I have no idea how they experienced her direct examination, and therefore no idea how they would have experienced the cross-examination. But as a woman, as someone who's covered the Trump story now for 9 years, I thought the disparaging treatment of Stormy Daniels is an exhibit in how class has entered into this trial. Hope Hicks weeping. I think people rushed to bring her a box of tissues. But Stormy Daniels, whose story Trump thought would make people so uncomfortable he paid to keep it quiet, seemed to be treated differently than anybody else.
What you saw today inside of that courthouse was a woman owning her story repeatedly for hours, owning her story. A former president of the United States hired a defense attorney, Nicole, Susan Nicholas, and that defense attorney went on the attack against that individual, Stormy Daniels, and tried to undercut her story, tried to extract the idea that there were discrepancies in her story. In every step of the way, Stormy Daniels fought back against a suggestion that somehow her story had changed. And she said, look, if I wanted to write a thriller, right, she goes, I would have written a different story. Quote, if that story was untrue, I would have written it to be a lot better. She went on. Susan Nicholas asked her, your story has completely changed, hasn't it? Stormy Daniels replied, no, not at all. You're trying to make me say that it has changed, but it hasn't changed. And let's just start with the fact, Nicole. Donald Trump, coming into this trial, had repeatedly issued blanket denials about his involvement and in his engagements with Stormy Daniels outside of the one photo op at that golf tournament. But what Stormy Daniels, when she testified that they had met up the night after with Ben Roethlisberger. She said that they had 2 to 3 phone calls for weeks following that 2006 interaction. She said that she was invited to a Trump vodka event in Hollywood in January of 2007. She said that he then invited her to Trump Tower, where they met to talk about her potentially appearing on The Celebrity Apprentice. And ultimately, Donald Trump's attorney today, who was the individual who was allowed to be that voice from him inside of that courtroom, did not question her on a litany of those alleged interactions that she claimed to have had with Donald Trump. Instead, the attorney focused on a couple questions around whether she actually had dinner with Donald Trump on that one-night stand in 2006. Questioned her on the 2011 parking lot incident. But by and large, over the course of hours under cross-examination, Stormy Daniels stood by her story. She stood by the fact that she had appeared in 150 porn films. She stood by her need to make money for her and her family. She stood by the allegations she made against the former president of the United States in the current presumptive Republican nominee for the White House in 2024, Nicole.
Andrew Weissman, your thoughts?
So right now, there is one person if you look at what happened in that room, per her testimony, there was one person who has testified under oath and been cross-examined aggressively for a full day, if you add in Tuesday and today. The other person has said without any sort of accountability for it that it didn't happen, but he has not testified to it. This reminds me of the impeachments where, he could have testified. He was happy to not do that. Mm-hmm. So he constantly is trying to avoid any situation where he will be held to account. Trump is, yes, sorry. So didn't come in for Mueller, didn't come in for either impeachments, hasn't testified at any of these trials about this. And so no accountability. The difference in the way she was treated when what she's talking about is a consensual relationship, and can think about how she was treated in the last day with David Pecker. He testified he needed immunity because what he was revealing was criminal. It was an effort to, as per his words, intentionally defame people with an agreement with Donald Trump to do that, to intentionally catch and kill an agreement with the defendant. That there's no onslaught. But here, because it's a woman of whose people will not relate to as readily, and because of his image, this is what she undergoes. It's remarkable. 3 of us could hear her, and I really wish people could hear it and not hear it secondhand from us. I was so interested today because I wasn't there Tuesday, and my impression, having seen lots and lots of trials, and I again don't know, not speaking for the jury. No. It was kind of a home run. I mean,
for who?
For the witness. I mean,
in what way?
So Susan Nicholas was, she did what she had to do. A lot of times you try different things in cross-examination and they don't all land. There were certain lines of cross that you knew were going to be a given, which is, she said she can speak to the dead, and, but she had a good explanation for that. She wants to make money from this. She had a good explanation for that, which is, it's not that it happened and she wants to make money from it. It's not that it's fake and she wanted to make money from it. so much else just fell by the wayside, including, I thought, something that was sort of touching and heartbreaking and shows that the witness is smart, is careful, unflappable, where she said, no, you don't understand. All I'm saying about Donald Trump, the worst thing he did is he lied about what happened. Everything else that happened in that room is on me. It's my fault. I mean, it was so...
Which was the heart of her direct testimony, that I laid there and couldn't figure out between me and myself how I got here.
Yeah, but it was a moment, though, where she was saying, I am not blaming anyone else. At one point, Susan Necheles was trying to say, well, you're a strong, powerful woman. You know, you could have just walked out. And she goes, I'm stronger now.